Hello and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live editing here on our YouTube channel. I'm Darlene and welcome. If you are brand new to the challenge or to watching this editing live, what I'm going to do today is this is a Lightroom week. So I alternate between Luminar and Lightroom. This is Lightroom today. So I'm going to be editing photos submitted by subscribers using Lightroom. And if you would like to participate and submit your images, there's the link for you to do so. So I am going to hop over into Lightroom and we'll get started. Okay, I forgot I already am in Lightroom. All right, let's see who all is here. We've got lots of regulars. Sheila, Hot Nova Scotia. Welcome, Mark. Mark, you're doing the Lightroom course right now, I believe. Marty, welcome. I got some of your images submitted. Also, you're suffering in the heat. No, we're not going to complain because we live with 6 months of winter here. So we suffer through when it's plus 35 and then when it's minus 35 as well. Hey, Linton, morning from Australia. David, welcome. All right, see if you can catch me on some stuff today, David. That's your challenge. Trip me up with something. I love to be challenged. Stephanie in Oregon, Deb in Alaska, and Merle in Michigan. Welcome, everybody. All right, so I've gotten a couple of images sent in. We haven't had Anne join us in a few weeks, and I know Holly is used to doing Luminar, but I've got one of Marty's images, and I thought I just took a quick look at this one, and I thought I want to work on this one because immediately out of the gate, what we see is some overexposure challenge here. So I'm going to try and fix that and pull out some detail because it looks like there's some really nice texture and lighting in here. So let's see what this image has got. So let's just see. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the chat at the same time. So my work process in Lightroom is the first thing that I generally do is find the color profile that I want to use. However, because it's so sort of blown out here, I'm going to dial the exposure down just temporarily anyways. So look at that. That's already a whole ton better. And I'll just bring the exposure, the highlights down. So see, that brings a lot of the tones in. And as predicted, there's a lot of nice cross lighting and texture here. Now that I can see it better, then I want to go back and pick this profile. Okay, so his camera matching, right? This is, if I do the info here, he's using, I don't have the camera on the thing here. I believe this is the Sony file, right, Marty? Your ARW is Sony, I believe. Yes, I am correct. Okay, so ARW, Sony file. So the profiles here are Sony profiles. So let's see what they have to offer. So landscape usually gives you a bit more punchy green and blue, right? So if you hover your mouse over, see how when I just go from the image over top, it's actually quite yellow. So I'm not crazy about that, right? Standard is actually not bad. It's a little bit more neutral. I almost never start with vivid because there's already a lot of contrast here and I don't want to add contrast. So I'm going to start with standard and then work on some of these other things, right? I'm going to do my shift double click trick. So if you don't know this one, okay, hover your mouse over the word white, hold the shift key down and double click. And what that does is it just moves the edge of the graph over so it touches the endpoint without anything clipping, in theory. Now, if we want to test that, hold down the Alt Option key while you click the slider, and it looks like it did a pretty good job. There's like, I don't know what that is, some water or a piece of garbage, maybe a stump. That's the only thing that's clipping way, like maybe 1 or 2 pixels there. So I'm not going to worry about that. Remember, I've already turned down the exposure and the highlights because if I had left those up high, right, you see we're going to get the sky clipping. So because I already dialed that down, okay, we're not getting the sky clipping. So I could do the whites first or the highlights. then I'm going to do the blacks. Actually, let me do the shift double click. So shift double click on the words. Right now, can you see when I make sure that there is a little bit of black clipping, I want to see this. Okay, so I'm holding down the Alt Option key to get this to show up. And you want to see a little bit of clipping in the blacks. Now, can you see the color difference? Let me just turn this part off here. I'm just going to undo the blacks. See the difference? When I put the blacks back, look at the color intensity. Okay, so whenever you have lack of color, it's probably because the image is flat and it lacks black. Okay, so that's also why I didn't choose this vivid one, because if I'd started out with vivid, now look, it's a little too oversaturated and over the top. Okay, then I'd be dialing things back. So I anticipated that I was going to be adding this and bringing it in line. Okay, so already we've gone from this to this with a profile and 4 sliders. Okay. I'm going to add some clarity. Now, I could try and bring the sky down even more. I could darken the whole thing. But you see, there's not a lot of detail there in the sky to begin with. So let's just see if we can do a selection of the sky using the masking tools. And if you're doing my Luminar Neo, if you're doing my Lightroom course, I have added a masking lesson. So there is a masking lesson there for you to watch. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I believe it's lesson 28, I think. All right, so now it has selected the sky. I'm just going to move the box out of the road, but it hasn't selected sort of this area. So if I darken it, you see what it's selecting? And I'm doing that just to show you. So it's kind of picked up the edges of the mountains, but not really, right? Because the trick here is if I darken a little bit and then I want some color, I can fake it, right? But it's not doing a great job. So honestly, in this case, the sky selection may not be the best bet. So I'm going to choose another method. So I'm going to go with luminance range, and I'm going to select just the sky. Okay, now notice that it picked up all the land as well. Okay, but I'm going to do an intersect here. So intersect means that it must match both criteria. So I've already selected the luminance range. That's the bright sky or bright parts of the image, but it's covering the entire image. Now I want to say I want it to be bright and in the sky. So I'm going to do an intersect. See, now it's selected the sky better with less overlap. And if I want to add in this tone as well, I can just add to it. And I'm going to try color range because it's kind of the only thing that's blue in this image. Okay, so see how it's picking up a bit across the top of the mountains there. Let me just turn it on. And I'm going to dial it down so that I'm just getting the background bits. You see that? So I don't want to get the top of the hill. That looks pretty good. And I've got most of the background there, right? Now can you see if I dial that down, right? You can see what it's doing. I can get rid of the sky completely. And then if I want to do a sky replacement, which might actually be a good option in this case, because if I dial the exposure and the highlights down, I'm still just getting a blob, right? So I'm not going to go too far with this. But there is something else that you can try, and that is down here. A lot of people don't know this is here. There's a little color box, and it's got an X on it. If you click the X, you get this. Then you can just use your color picker, okay, to add a color. Now notice it does go on the land as well, okay? So I wouldn't make it quite so saturated, or I can make it more warm and sunsetty. Okay, so if I want it to go more with the color of the land, we can do something like that. So see what that mask is doing? And this would be a case where, in regards to Lightroom, I'm going to do less of that one. That looks good. In regards to Lightroom, I may actually want to take it out somewhere else and do a sky replacement because it's limited in terms of this. Okay, if I turn off the color range, yeah, see, I've gotten that. So I'm going to try this color range one again. So I wasn't happy with it. So I'm going to add color range again. And I'm just going to click this time. I want very limited selection. Actually, that's not bad. It's kind of darkening the top of the hill though. So you end up with this thing where I'm going to have to either do some masking. I could try and select or deselect the mountain and all that other stuff. So I want to keep it off the mountain a little bit and find a happy medium. Okay, so that's not bad. Before and after, right? The next thing I would generally do is make sure that I have some lens corrections if I have any distortion that I want to deal with, right, in here. So it automatically has applied the Sony lens correction. I can see if there's any chromatic aberration, and there is. Okay, can you see this? Let me zoom in. See, there's a tiny purple outline around the edge of the rock here. And if I go to the other side, there should be a green fringe on the other side. Usually there's purple on one side, green on the other. Where is it? Can you see? It just looks like it's sort of cut out. And that's partly because I've pushed that. Okay, there's another purple fringe around the tree. So I'm going to do remove chromatic aberration. Did you see that disappear? Let me zoom in again. Okay, turn it off. There's a little bit of a purple fringe. Turn it on. And if you still have a fringe, you can try this tool here. But I think I've got most of it. Oops, now I went too far. There we go. All right. Next, I would probably want to apply some detail and add a vignette here. Okay, because right now your eye is going sort of everywhere because of those 4 things that attract your eye. So when I'm editing, I always keep in mind, what is my goal? Why am I editing this, right? So the 4 things that are grabbing your attention, right, are listed down below: brightness, sharpness, color, and contrast. Well, this whole image has those 4 things, right? If we look at it, it looks like it's sharp from back to front. He shot this with f8. Oops, I think I'm zooming into 200%. Let's fix that. There we go. So definitely sharp in the foreground, sharp in the middle, and reasonably sharp in the background as well, right? So sharpness all over, right, is, there we go, not really directing our eye to the subject. So I'm going to add a vignette to help guide the eye into the center of the image. And my vignette trick, dial the feather down to 0, darken the amount, and I'm going to try either highlight priority or color priority. So highlight priority, I'm going to try first, dial the feather up strong, and then bring the amount something to where it's a bit softer. Okay. Now, if I bring the highlights up, watch what happens in this upper corner of the sky. So this highlight slider here is telling Lightroom, maintain the integrity of the highlights even where you're putting the vignette. Okay. So it makes it look a little bit more realistic there. Let's try color priority. This one, I find you have to dial a little bit darker to get the same effect. I think this one blends a little bit nicer with this image. Okay. Now, I would like to have it a little bit darker on this bottom corner, and perhaps maybe we want to crop that corner out. So when I'm considering cropping, okay, the crop tool keyboard shortcut is R. When I'm considering cropping, I want to think about the edges. Is there anything on the edge that needs to go, right? The horizon's way up here, so we're not so worried about that. Your eye wants to go in this middle area where there's lots of detail here, but I'm drawn to this little bush here in the foreground, as well as this bright part here on the bottom right corner. So let's see what happens if we just crop it out. Is it better as a pano? Right? Now there's this white thing over here that's still grabbing my attention. So I'm just going to use the spot healing tool on it. And I'm just using my brush to get a smaller painting, right? It actually did a pretty good job. Let me just move that over here. I'm trying to line up the edge of the bush. Does that look realistic? Not so much. That looks pretty good. Okay, I just want to get rid of that bright spot. How do we feel about the cropping? What does everybody think? Let's get a survey here. Crop it as it is or leave it full. Marty says, I like what you're doing. When I edited this one, I did use Luminar AI to replace the sky. I probably will do that as well. So let's pull that in. Okay. Yeah, intersect is, like I said, more complicated masking. So when you want to you select one thing, for example, the sky, and then you want to add or subtract to it. Those are pretty straightforward so that you select more or less of it. But intersect means it must match both things. Yep. Lesson 28 is indeed on masking. David's 3/4 of the way through. A good lesson it is. Awesome. Glad you're liking that one. Right. And we did mention that the other course that we did with Pete Vanderline is a 6-hour class just on masking in Lightroom. Right. So there's so much to know about this. Linton says cropped. Stephanie says cropped. David says crop. Sheila says crop even tighter. Well, let's see. Let's see if we crop any tighter. Like more from the bottom, Sheila? Let's do a little bit more. Let's get rid of that other green bush. So remember I talked about things on the edge of the image? If I get rid of this hill, now I've just got this thing on the edge here. So if I go a little bit more, like Sheila said, we'll get rid of that. Now I'm looking at my edges. Maybe there's a little bit over here I can get rid of there and just put that tree on the corner. I'd probably do something like that. I don't know that I'd want to crop it any tighter than that. I like it more panorama for sure, and definitely coming off the bottom here. And I like the fact that it's sort of more detailed, like the rocks are more detailed, and then the hills are smaller, and then the hill here is bigger. So it's kind of like the further away they go, the hills and the things get more smaller and more detailed, which is interesting. Okay. I'm going to go back to this mask here because I'm still not happy with this whole color range mask that I put on here in the sky. So I'm going to just darken it less. Okay, and maybe take out that orange for now. Okay, so now we got really blue sky, right? It definitely could use a shift. Let's try shifting the color. Okay. I'm going to just remove this color range because I'm not sort of happy with it. All right. I'm going to go with this and darken it not as much. So I'm just going to keep it soft. See that? If I go too far, it gets that halo. So does everybody understand what I mean by a halo? Right? So if I make this obvious, you'll see it. We'll see where, I'm not sure where I've got the eyedropper, but do you see where it's got the edge of the sky and the mountains meet here? So there's a part of the mountains that ended up dark on the edge. Okay, that's considered a halo, right? So you want to avoid darkening the edges of things like that or having it overlap into the thing next to it. So I'm going to dial it back, and I remove the orange because I am going to do a sky replacement on this one, right? This is another one that would have a really great candidate. Here's an interesting dilemma, Rob. I can't pull it into Luminar right now because I have stuff that I can't show you guys. It's a secret. All right. So just know that I would do a sky replacement on this one. I can actually do it in Photoshop if you want to see that. This one would be a great candidate, though, for what I would call dodging and burning. Well, what is called dodging and burning. Right, let me just do that. It's doing some kind of weird limitation here somewhere. Have I got a tone curve? No. There's some kind of weird thing happening here, like it's not going to the edge. Do you see that? I wonder if that's the profile. I'm going to try an Adobe profile just to see the difference here. Let's try Adobe. Definitely not. These are very orange. Okay, let's try this one. I just want to see what it's doing. I'm going to warm the whole thing up a little bit because we can't go off the edge anymore, which is very strange, right? It's like the graph won't go off the edge. Very strange. Yeah, very, very strange. All right, let's go with something like that. And let's take it into Photoshop because I want to show you a couple of things. In Photoshop, you can do a dodge and burn layer, okay? And you can also do the sky replacement. So let me just make sure I've got everything else corrected here. Do I want to do any noise reduction? It's ISO 100, so probably not. I'm just going to do a tiny bit of sharpening. All right, so to get into Photoshop, you want to right click, and there's a few options to get there, right? In the Lightroom course, I actually just covered this in lesson, Rob, you just did this one. Is it lesson 32 or is 31? Which one is going to Photoshop? I think it's 31. Going to Photoshop, okay? So we're going to choose edit as a smart object in Photoshop. So now it's going to open Photoshop and open this as a layer. Well, the thing is, Charles, about the update, I can tell you what's coming. I just can't show it to you yet. So they have what's called an embargo because they want everybody to release it at the same time. And then it gives a fair shake to all of their partners to release it at the same time. That's all. And they also want to make sure that we, as the people who are making the videos to demonstrate it, have a final version that is stable and that what we're showing you is going to be what you get. Okay. Was there a vignette applied? Yes, I did apply a vignette, but it shouldn't have limited the whites, Sheila. I found that was something weird going on there. All right, let me move my layers panel. I work with 2 monitors, so I usually put some of my tools on my other screen. I can't move there we go. Let me move this and make it a little bit smaller. Now, I don't know if you can see this on here or not. And if I zoom in, let me see what happens if I zoom in. Does that work? Okay, so see this little icon right here at the bottom of the layer? That means it's a smart object, okay? You won't see that on a regular layer. And what that means is you can apply any kind of filter, okay? And it will be editable, okay? So it's non-destructive. The filter that I want to apply here is not a filter really, but it's sky replacement, okay? Now, of course, it's going to give me warnings that I can't apply it, I'm guessing. Yeah, I can't apply it to a smart object. All right, so we're going to rasterize this layer because we can't apply the sky to a smart object. All right, so scratch that one. Now we're going to go to Edit on Photoshop and Sky Replacement. You can see how often I do sky replacement with Photoshop. All right, this is one of my skies in my sky pack, and I think it works well on a lot of images. It's just happened to be a really nice sunset that I took in the Drumheller area. But the thing with images like this is you have to make sure that you match the lighting direction carefully. Okay, so when we look at this image, where's the light coming from? Okay, if you can't tell, take a look at the shadows, right? Look at this little bush here. Okay, the shadow is going this way. Okay, so where would the sun be? The sun would be over this direction. Okay, right now I've got it over here. So if I'm going to use this sky, I definitely need to have it over here. Okay, oops. And when you get into doing these things here, you can move it around. Like you can actually move the sky, right? Just by grabbing it. And I'm not sure that this is going to be the best image. So I'm going to look for another one here. Let's look for a sunset. And I think some of these come with Photoshop. They're not great. And you can add your own. Here's another one of mine from my Sky Pack. I'm going to try this one. And you can shift the edge as well. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to flip it a little bit. And I'm going to try and shift it. No, that's not doing what I want to do. See, I can move it this way. And let's see, make it larger. Where's my output scale? There we go. I can make it larger. Too large. It's taking a moment to respond, which is interesting. It's not blending super well with the original either. So, but do you see what I mean by I need to have the sun over here. And this one hasn't got the sun off-centered enough. So I'm going to try and find a different one. I need one with the sun off-centered. Let's see what's in this one. They're all centered. Come on, give us one that's off-centered. This one might be closer. Let's see if this one's any closer. It's got this one isn't cropped. So if you're making your own skies, do you see this one? This is the bottom of the other sky, and it's got foreground in it. So if you're making your own skies, for heaven's sake, crop out all the other stuff, right? And just leave it as sky. So I'm not sure where these came from, but I'm going to just add some from my other skies here. So I'm going to go find my own Sky Pack here. Let's see, where is my Luminar pack? I think they're in here. Nope. Give me a second. Let me just find my skies. That's bokeh. Well, I know they're over here. So I'm going to go in here and find my skies. There it is. Okay, so now I can just sort of scroll through them. I'm just holding my space bar, and I'm looking for one that's off-centered. And again, they're all kind of centered, but I want to have the sun in it, right? That actually might work. That might work too. Right, so I want to have the sun because the original image has the sun in it. So I want something that will match. Let's see what we can do with this one. Okay, so I'm just going to add it and then select it. Okay, let's warm it up. Again, it's not perfectly matching, and I need to sort of, get it off center a little bit more. I find this is actually clunkier, right, than doing it in Luminar, to be honest. So I'm actually going to put this back as a smart object. Let's see if I can use Luminar AI, because I think I still have it installed. I'm going to use Luminar AI and cheat. So I'm not a fan of the Photoshop sky replacement. I find that, especially on images that have a reflection, if you've got water, it doesn't do the reflection for you. So it really doesn't do you any favors. All right, so we're back in Luminar AI, and I have to remember where things are now. And we're going to find a nice, let's find a dramatic sunset. Please don't use this one. This is the one that's built into Luminar, and everybody uses that one. And it's really overused, right? So I'm just going to make sure the horizon is good here. Let's flip it so it's over there. Do you see what I mean? It doesn't match, right? The sun should be coming over here and skimming this. We should have a bright sun in the image, and nothing is super matching, but we can try and fudge that a little bit here. Maybe this one. Okay, now we're getting closer. Now we're getting closer. Okay, so now I can move this one over a little bit. Okay, so again, I'm trying to get the sun to match this angle here. And it's not blending super well. I can move this down a little bit, but I want to blend it a little better. Okay, That's going to help. Scene lighting also helps. Okay, so see how it just changed the lighting on the foreground, right? I want to blend that a little better. See, it's being tricked by this horizon over here as well. So I'm trying to get it to fill in a little better. I do find that Neo does a better job of the filling in of these gaps. So it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Well, let's see how we can do this. I'm going to paint it in a little bit here, just real quick. Oops. Now I've done it. There we go. I'm going to erase. There we go. Just trying to fill in this halo. Okay, so that's another one that's a halo. When you have this white mark around, so I'm just trying to get this color in there. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. So the color of the sky matches better with the landscape, as does the blend mode. Okay, so I could fix this a little better by masking this edge here, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. All right, let's see. Marty says, taking an early morning light as I tried to beat the heat in Bryce Canyon. Oh, early morning. Okay, cool. Sky replacement has come a long way in many programs. Still something to be careful with to keep realistic. Yes, absolutely, Charles. And that's why I'm saying, like, you need to match the direction of light and you need to match the quality of light. Because the original image has deep and harsh shadows, I need to have the sun in the picture, right? Well, is the thing with On One is that I tested it and I've tested it twice, Charles, and I've not become a fan of it. If you could share a link to that video, I did a review of On One probably 6 months ago, and I really wanted to like it, Charles. I really, really did, but I just didn't like it. And as far as Capture One goes, no, I haven't done Capture One because I don't use it. My primary is Lightroom and Luminar. I also use some Topaz plugins as well as Photoshop. So those are the things that I cover because that's my workflow. For me to cover Capture One would be, first of all, disingenuous because I don't use it and I'm not an expert in it by any stretch of the imagination. There's a strong horizon line that's messing with the sky replacement. And partly it is, partly because also it's faded out. I'm gonna play with this one in Luminar Neo, but I'm not gonna show you guys. So I'll see what I can do. All right. All right, now we should be back in Photoshop. Okay, so here we are back in Photoshop. And what I was actually going to do, and I should have added that while I was in Luminar AI, is actually the star burst. So I'm going to go back here to Luminar AI. Mark says, oh, that's interesting. Mark says, On One's not stable. They concentrate on adding new features rather than reliability. And honestly, that's something that people have been critical of Skylum for. And we actually had a briefing with them today as partners. And I'm an ambassador for Skylum. We had a briefing with them about the new stuff that's coming. And I said to them, like, I don't get to meet with Adobe. I don't get to meet with On One. I don't get to meet with Topaz. They are the only company that I can actually get in a Zoom call with and have a CEO show up at the meeting. So just for that alone, I think Skylum, there's a lot of benefit in working with Skylum. And do they have issues? I think they all do. They all have their challenges, but they're doing amazing job considering as well that they're in Ukraine and they're currently dealing with issues there. Okay, so now see when I place the sun rays, okay, I warmed it up a little because the sun rays will look very white otherwise, okay? And let's just see how much glow. So glow extends out over the land, glow radius, okay, not so crazy about that. I don't usually do a lot of glow. This one's not bad, right? Penetration, okay, sun rays length is how far they go, And this one is how sort of intense the sun rays are. So I actually don't mind a little more in this case. Okay. You can also change the entire look of your image with this tool, which I love, right? Like, look what we can do with it. And this is my favorite one, randomize. I get to just sort of flip around. And what I'm looking for is a beam of light hitting this little bush here that shows me that the shadow is there. Kind of like that, okay? And I think I'm just going to do less rays. Oh, now I've changed my thing, so I need to randomize again. I usually use fewer rays than more when I'm using this tool. And I just like playing with randomizer. I'm just sort of clicking along it until I see what I want. I wish there was like a spin the wheel button. It's kind of like that. I feel like I'm spinning the wheel. Okay, we were close there. Tell me when to stop. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I dialed up the amount. So I'm just going to bring the amount down a little bit. And then bring this down a little bit. I see what this is doing. Look at that. Right? Amazing. And I can decide if I want to keep it light or darken it down. Look at that. That's really dramatic, right? Really dramatic. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go not quite that dramatic, but I really like what the sun rays adds to it, right? And that's what I mean by keeping the integrity of the direction of light and the quality of light, right? So Mark says, on one with a large catalog of 100,000 or more, it crashes more than 3 times a day. Okay, so now we're back in Photoshop. I'm just going to save. And if I wanted to apply anything else here, I could. I'm going to do another layer here just to show you a dodge and burn layer in here. If you make a blank layer with a blend mode of screen, oh, no, wrong one, sorry, overlay. Blend mode of overlay, and then click this option here to fill with a neutral color. And I'm just going to call this dodge and burn, okay? And guess what's coming back to Luminar Neo as well. So again, I'm allowed to talk about this, but I'm not allowed to show you yet is their dodge and burn tool is back. So with the next update, you will get dodge and burn if you are doing Luminar. Okay, now I'm going to get a brush. So I just click B and make sure that I'm using black and white. Okay, so if I paint with black, I'm going to use 100% opacity just to show you what this does. Okay, if I paint with black, so this layer is completely gray. And what overlay blend mode does is anything that differs from gray will show on this layer. Okay, so anything that's gray doesn't show up. So the layer, if I turn off the base layer, this one is just gray. Okay, but if I paint with black, that part's going to show up as darker. If I paint with white, that part's going to show up as whiter. So it basically adds contrast. So watch what happens if I do black. Okay, I'm painting at 100%. Okay, all right, that's a little bit too black. Let's go 50%. Okay, so see how it darkens, right? If I use white, I'm just pressing X to switch colors. See over here, I'm switching colors. So the top one is what I'm painting with. Now if I paint with white, okay, I'm dodging, okay? See that? So how do you use that, right? Well, you can use it to increase the contrast of your image. For example, I want to make sure I've got a soft brush, which I do. And then I'm just going to make it a little smaller. So anything that I want to darken, I just want to paint over it. So I can deepen the shadows, okay? Enhancing the contrast. Let's say I want to have a little bit more. I would zoom in to 100% when I'm doing this, or at least 50. I'm just doing a really sort of rough and dirty job here. And I'm painting at 10%. So I'm painting at a lower opacity, and I'm just sort of layering it in. By layering, I mean like building it up, okay? Building it up. Now, if I switch colors to white, okay, anything that I want highlighted, it's going to change to 20%. See that? See when I painted there along this ridge, for example, I can pick up the highlights there. Right? So this is kind of what's called dodging and burning to bring out additional highlights. Now see this layer, okay? If I turn off the base layer, that's what this layer looks like, okay? Just a bunch of gray and white strokes. And if I turn it off now, see what it's doing? So it's adding a little bit of contrast, right? Likewise, I can use the black to darken corners and things, right? So if I want to add sort of a custom vignette, right, I can darken this corner a little bit more right here, okay? Or maybe darken this valley because it's too bright, as well as this bit in here, okay? So now see what it's doing? Now I'm just going to save and close and come back to Lightroom, okay? I do say dodging and burning. So we're going a little deep on this one. Thanks for providing such a great image, Marty. This is a fantastic shot with great lighting. And that's why I chose it as well, because you have to start with good raw material. And even though it was a little bit overexposed, right, the Sony files have plenty of detail and latitude in the raw files. So, you know, look what we were able to create. So I'm going to go back here. It's going to change my background color because I keep fooling myself here. I'm going to make a virtual copy. I think I did. There it is. And I'm going to reset it, but not all the way. Oh, this one has no history. Aha. See, I did that to myself. So I want to do the one. Oh, I did make 2 virtual copies. I'm going to go back to the one that I did all the editing on right up until when I applied the camera profile. Okay, so basically I want to go back before I did most of the edits. So we're going to, I'm just going to make a snapshot, and I did that in the lessons as well. Let me just see. I'm just going to call it before. Okay, so we've got before, middle, and after. So let's compare these 3 versions. Okay, so the original shot basically just darkened a little bit. Lightroom edit with a little bit of cropping, and final Luminar edit. Big difference, right? And I didn't have to go as dark on this one. I could have chosen to keep it a little bit lighter and airier, but that's totally, you know, the editor's prerogative or the photographer's prerogative, right? Your image, Marty, you may decide to keep it lighter. Any questions about that one? That was a great edit. Thanks, Linton. Yeah, beautiful image, right? Makes you want to go to the canyon now. Let's see. Pittsburgh. We love Philadelphia area and the Amish country when we went through there. All right, let's do another image. I can't go much over an hour today because I've got some other commitments. Let's do this one of Stephanie's. So she sent me a little frog. So let's start at the beginning. Camera profile. Now this is a CR3 file, so this will be Canon. Okay. Close the Adobe one. So we've got faithful, like landscape. See how it intensifies the green? And I don't think that's a good thing because he sort of gets lost in there. So I'm going to go with one of these ones that are a bit more neutral. And in fact, I like faithful. I do like the Canon one that's called faithful a lot. Okay. Then I'm going to check the blacks and the whites. See, there's tiny bit of highlight on him that's clipping. So I'm not going to worry about that. It's kind of water on top of his back. So it's what's called a specular highlight, right? So if I zoom in, right, and we do the whites, you see it's the part that he's shiny, where he's shiny, okay? Now I'm going to give him a little bit of clarity, but I don't want to do overall clarity, possibly not even at all, because I want to make sure that he has more clarity and sharpness and intensity than everything around him, because right now he's sort of hiding. He's lost, which is what they do, right? He's camouflaged, right? Okay, so I'm going to give it maybe a bit more yellow. Maybe not. Actually, the color that he was shot with was pretty good, right? Now, if I go into HSL and start to work on things like green, he gets affected as well, right? So I don't want to do that. And that's one of my pet peeves about Lightroom, is that I can't use the HSL panel when masking. So if I want to do that, then I take it to Luminar as well, right? Yellow, okay, see what that does? Yellow, actually, if I bring that down a little bit, it affects the grass more than it does him. So I think that's a good thing. So I'm going to desaturate and darken the yellow just a bit, right? Orange is going to pick up these grasses. So I'm going to darken and lower the saturation a little bit as well. It's picking up him a little bit too, so not too far. Now I want to go into a mask, because I really want to pick him up. So I'm going to choose select subject, right? Any bets on whether or not Lightroom's going to pick up the frog in this or not? Because Lightroom's looking for things that are sharp, and I don't know if it's going to find this frog. Oh, I pressed sky. Okay, so definitely there's no sky. All right, so Lightroom was right. Let's try the right button this time. Okay, so it actually found him. I'm fairly impressed with that. I didn't think it would. So it's found him, but now I want to add some clarity and texture. Okay, so I'm going to do clarity and texture. Okay, so see how that just helps him pop a little bit. Then with the latest update to Lightroom, this is new. Okay, duplicate and invert. Previously, I had to do select subject again and then invert it. If you had any additional things added or subtracted here, it became complicated, right? Now, duplicate and invert, okay? So obviously, people were asking for this and they listened. Now, the mask isn't perfect, so I might just go in and do a brush to erase a little bit. So I chose subtract because it's picking up a little bit of his eyeball over there. So I want to just make sure I've got all of him. Okay, like that. And I could do the same here too, right? So if I add to this mask, I just want to make sure that I've got his eye and all of him. Right? Name your mask is a good idea. Also, just click on the 3 dots. Okay, so this is frog, and this is background. Basically everything but the frog, right? Let me zoom out. Now I'm going to darken and bring the highlights down. So see how the highlights and the contrast around him is what is making him sort of lost. Okay. But when we bring the highlights down, maybe I don't even need to bring the darkness down. I can also lower things like contrast, texture, clarity, sharpness, and saturation. Okay. See how he is starting to come out now? If I turn off this background, let me just turn off this panel over here. Okay. Let me turn off the background mask. See how it's brighter, darker. And I can take it a step farther because we also have a vignette, which we haven't applied yet. So that's under effects. I'm just going to go like that. I'm not even going to worry about feathering it. Right? Now, again, I do this dance, right? So previously I was working with the white. I want to bring that up a little bit and possibly even exposure. I might want to brighten him a little bit. So I'll go back to the mask. You can reopen the mask at any time, right? So I can brighten him. See that? And I think I might crop a little bit because there's still a lot of stuff going on here and he's still lost. He is in the thirds real nice. So I'm going to lock the aspect ratio. You can just click the lock. And then when I drag in, I'm going to keep him down in this bottom corner. But I want to get rid of some of this stuff in the foreground here. maybe even just come in a little bit more. Okay? See how it brings him forward a little bit? And now it's like these grasses are almost sort of framing him, right? I could even go farther with the vignette on this one. See that? Don't be afraid to go dramatic on stuff like this. So look at the before, right? He's lost and camouflaged. Now it's almost like he's spotlit. Okay. This is actually a cool image in terms of I could bring the saturation down even more on the background like this, make it really soft. And then we could actually do a color grading or duotone. So I'm actually going to add green into the shadows. Okay, so you can do shadows, midtones, and highlights. So as I drag the saturation up, right, you see what happens. So I'm going to give him a little bit of green in the shadows. Maybe not so much. Let's try blue. Blue's kind of cool. Okay, so blue in the shadows. I like that. Let's try green in the midtones. A little too much saturation there. And then let's try yellow in the highlights. Okay, so even though it's still a color image, I can do this idea of this tritone. Okay, turn it off, turn it on. It's very subtle. I like it. So there's a frog buddy. Charles says, nature worked so hard to make sure you couldn't find him. Well, the photographer, in this case, Stephanie, this is your image, right, Stephanie? Yeah, found him, right? And now we've just made it pop, as she said, right? So good job on finding him and not bothering him enough so that he didn't run away and taking his photo. So we should give him a name. Let's see. Okay, I'm going back up to questions here. I see that Thomas has a question. All right. Technical question for Rob. Lightroom lesson 2 downloaded my images. They're located in the download folder, not in pictures. It's going to present a problem going forward. Yes, I would have moved them into pictures. You can still do that, Thomas. You've already got them in Lightroom. If you've already got them linked, I will show you how to do that, actually. Okay, so here we are inside Lightroom. Okay, and when you're in the folders area, okay, you've probably got something here that says downloads. Okay, for example, here's some that I linked to from downloads. This is one I just edited for somebody, but they're not actually there anymore. Okay, let's just see what I could add. Okay, so for example, I've got some zoom backgrounds. These are some images that I made just for, doing zoom, and I put it behind me, right? If you want to move this folder, right? For example, if I want to move it into my pictures, so it's already in the main pictures folder, for example. But if you want to move it into your pictures folder here, okay, so you would see downloads. So they would be in here. Just grab them all, right? And if they're in subfolders, which they should be, just grab the main folder and just drop it into pictures. Okay, so I'm going to do that with the zoom background just to show you how it works. Okay, so grab the main folder, right? So in this case, it would be the Lightroom course files. Okay, see that? And I'll just put them in downloads. I'll do the opposite for you. So if I take this and drop it into downloads, okay, it actually moved the whole folder. Now, if I go and look at this, wants to access Finder. Oh, okay. It won't let me go to Finder. Interesting. There we go. Okay, so now you can see that this folder called Lightroom course is now in my downloads. Okay, so now this is exactly what you've got going on, right? Just put it back. So drag and drop into pictures. That's it. That's all you gotta do. I want to check to see if that answers your question. Stephanie said, took a while to find the frog. No doubt. He was hiding well. Okay, now I've lost where I was working on the collection. There we are. Okay. Sheila says, great image on the canyon. Thanks, Sheila. Yes, David basically said what I just said. Just move them. Right. Exactly. There's going to be several more downloads as you go through the course, Thomas. So you want to put them in the right place now. And then as you download them, before you import them into Lightroom, just put them in the right place. And then you just have to add them. Right. And yeah, good to see you. Let's see. Weird sense of humor is okay around here, Charles. Whiskey Blues playlist. Well, now I'm interested in that. We're actually going to a blues festival next month here in Edmonton. So I'm quite looking forward to that. Did that answer your question, Thomas, about moving those? If not, if you're able to come to the live session tomorrow for the class, join us, right? It's going to be at noon your time. You're in California, if I remember correctly. So, no, you're in Washington, if I remember correctly. So it should be noon your time, noon PST. If you could join us, that would be great, right? If not, and it doesn't answer your question, just fire me an email, all right? He says yes. Okay. Let's see if I can do one more. As I said, I can't stick around too late today. Actually, now is probably a good time for anybody that's not currently in our course. I'll just do a little plug for the Lightroom course. Rob, if you could pop a link to the course in the chat. We're currently in the middle of 10 live sessions, but all of the lessons that I've done for the course, I've mentioned some of them along the way. I've already been pre-recorded and put into the course. We're on lesson 33. I'm working on 34 tomorrow. So we're up to exporting now. We get to export. But I did a big one on presets, and David was doing the masking one. So it's really comprehensive course. I break it down step by step. And honestly, I think most of you are already in the class, so I don't need to tell you about it. But if you have any friends that are struggling with Lightroom, definitely tell them about it, and tell them what you've gained by doing it. And if you are enjoying the course, give us a review. If you're not sure how to do that, just message Rob and he will let you know. All right, so let me get back. Sorry, I'm using two different programs. I'm using the keyboard shortcuts for Luminar and Lightroom. Okay, all right. I think I want to do something different. So we did two landscape-ish ones. This is one of Anne's images, and I'll let her know that I'm working on it. And I wanted to do something with this one because it's kind of the opposite of the first problem, right? The first one was overexposed and really contrasty because of the light and the scene, right? This one here is flat. So when you look at a histogram like this and there's space on both ends of the graph, there's nothing you could do when you're shooting this. She photographed this absolutely correct, right? This is perfect exposure, right? What you need to do is, if you want to get rid of sort of this haziness, you just need to add a bit more punch. So she's already chosen camera landscape. Let's just see if any of the others work any better. So landscape definitely gives it more blue. So I would agree with that. I'm going to use my shift, double click on the whites and the blacks. Okay, now look what happened. Okay, extreme contrast now, but see how the graph spread out? I'm going to undo those two steps for you. Okay, watch the graph while I do this. Okay, whites, I want to shift, double click. See that? Blacks, watch this part of the graph, shift, double click. Okay, so what it's doing is, if I look at what's clipping, holding the Alt Option key, oops, I need to press on the actual slider, there's really nothing clipping there, very little, okay? Like this highlight on this boat over here. And if I look at blacks, there's not much clipping there either, okay? Now I could probably just bring up the shadows and bring the highlights down a little bit. But look at the massive contrast change just from those two sliders, okay? And notice the color. Look at the color of the water. Now, that I'm guessing there's some chromatic aberration here because usually, yeah, see that? I'm going to zoom right in. That's a perfect example of chromatic aberration. Green on one side, purple on the other. So that gets corrected down here under lens corrections, right? Literally, it's a tick box. Da, 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 it's gone. Okay, let me turn it back on. See that? Watch the stripes here on either side of these posts. Okay, the green is gone. Let's see if it recognizes her lens. It did. Okay, so lens correction, see how it's correcting a bit of the distortion, but also see how the corners are a little bit darker. Okay, so it's removing that darkness on the corner to make it even. I find that if you're adding a vignette later, I probably sometimes leave it. But in an image like this where it's clean blue sky, okay, you may find that if you leave the corners darkened, you end up with an even weirder dark corner. Okay, so use this one as much as necessary. I'm going to zoom back in here. I want to see if there's any more purple. Okay, under the manual tab on lens corrections, there's this little eyedropper. See, there is purple there. When you hover over, if you see any purple, click on it. And see what happened is it changed some stuff over here. Okay. See when I turn it off and on. I'm going to actually turn off this profile. Actually, I'm going to turn off the distortion. So I'm going to keep the distortion because I want to just show you the before and after without it jumping around. See that? Okay, big difference. And it actually makes your image look sharper. Okay. Okay, now this one is ISO 125, but it's got a little bit of noise or haze. Plus, I'm probably zoomed into about 400% there. So we're seeing like a lot of grain. Okay. Let's see if we want to warm it up a little bit. It seems purple to me, so a little bit magenta. I'm going to bring the magenta down a little bit. See that? A little bit less purple. Okay. Now I can decide, if I want to go warmer with it. See how it picks up more yellow in the sky and it actually starts to look more like a sunset. Right? Then I can do some HSL edits. Actually, let's make sure it's not crooked. I'm going to use the crop tool and try auto. It corrected it a tiny bit. And I think it's looking at the verticals here because it's hard to do the horizon, right? If we're not sure it got it right, I can use this ruler and I can just run it along the bottom here. Looks like about the same. So it looks pretty straight. I'm going to come in a little bit here like that. Okay, now I want to darken the sky a little bit using HSL. In here, there's this targeted tool, okay? So we can click on it and it disattaches itself. Then wherever you click, you have to hold it down. So click and hold and then drag down. It's going to affect that tone. Okay, so while I'm on the luminance tab, in this case, it's darkening. Okay, so I don't want to go too far. And then I want to do the same up here. See that? Now I've got this weird sort of light spot in the middle that doesn't really match any of the colors. There's almost green in there. Can you see that? Okay, so you have to be careful that you don't end up like with a strip in the middle. Okay, and if you push it too far, you end up with stuff that looks like that. Okay, so we're getting some weird artifacting in the sky. So I don't want to go too far. Like that. See how I shifted the color a little bit? If we look at the metadata, I wonder if we can see what time it was shot. It says 4:30 in the afternoon in September. So I don't know that it would be sunset in Vancouver because I know that's where Anne lives. But we can pretend it is. We can make it be sunset. now that I've got that, now I'm going to do a sky mask. Okay, so select sky. Aha, it didn't get all the bits. See that? So it's missing in here. Okay, because look what happens. If you're not sure if it's gotten everything, right, just take your exposure down all the way. Yeah, no. Okay, so it's not working. So I'm actually going to delete that mask, and I'm going to try another method. I'm going to try luminance range, right? So I'm just going to drag it over these parts here, and then just expand the range to make sure that I have the whole sky. See how that works a little better? Now it's selecting all the bits in between, okay? It's picking up a little bit over there too, so maybe I want to go not quite that far. Aha, see, it's picking up. Yeah, it's picking up. If I want to get the sky, I have to go to the left here. I know how to fix that. We'll just see what happens. We're going to darken a little bit and maybe highlights down as well. So again, see how I'm getting this band of white in the middle here? And that's because of that HSL adjustment I did. So your sky wouldn't be dark, light, dark, right? So be careful of things like this. So I'm going to go back and fix that, right? Let's see how it's darkening, and it's doing a good job. So sky didn't work so great, whereas luminance range did. All right, so I'm just going to back off the yellow darkening a little bit, as well as the orange. Yeah, see, it won't get that color in the middle. I don't know what color that is. There's no color here. Well, it's green. You see that? There's not one that's this color. Isn't that bizarre? So I'm just going to go slightly on all of them and try and get it even as possible. See, this is what's called banding. And you get this line here, okay? So it's not blending well because I'm pushing the pixels too far, okay? I'm just going to try and keep it a little bit neutral. Maybe it's toxic waste in the sky. Who knows, right? So I'm not crazy about that little bit in there, and I'll try to clean that up a little bit more. But there's our before and after. Right. Now, the thing is that there's a dehaze slider here as well that I haven't used. Okay. So I can also add a bit of clarity. Right. But again, watch out for added clarity and texture if you have a lot of sky like this, as well as sharpening. Right. Remember, in the detail panel, if you increase your sharpening, and I'm just going to take this really high to show you what happens here. Okay. When you increase the sharpening super high, you end up with noise in your sky. Right? If you increase the masking slider, see how it comes off the sky? It looks for smooth areas and removes it from them. So if you're going to do any sharpening and you have a big sky area like this, make sure you use the masking slider. Okay. Where was I at? Okay, denoise or dehaze, pardon me. So dehaze is designed to eliminate that haze that we had originally. Okay, but look what it does. It tends to sometimes make a mess, especially if you go too far with it. Okay, if I remove the black slider here, you could see it's literally just kind of doing the same thing. But I like to use this one because it gives me more control, literally. Okay. If I want to leave a little bit of haze, I can. So she's managed to make some sort of industrial shipyard look pretty. All right, what have I missed here? Sheila says, excellent course, worth the time and money, even when your mouse doesn't work. Yeah, we learned that one. Just a quick fix, right? Mark, I took the Neo course and I loved it. And you taught me how to use Photoshop Smart Object for Lightroom Classic to Photoshop to Neo to Photoshop to Lightroom. Awesome. And I reiterated that again when I did the lesson on Photoshop and when I did the lesson on plugins for the Lightroom course as well. Lightroom, this allows Lightroom Classic to store both the original RAW as well as the working copy of the PSD of the work in Neo. Getting your Lightroom class tonight. Awesome, Mark. I thought you were already in there, but yes, you're in the Luminar course, and there is a group for the Lightroom class as well. So we have several lives left, Mark. We're on lesson, which one are we doing tomorrow? 25 tomorrow. We're doing 25 to 28 tomorrow. But if you sign up and you want to come to the live, even if you're not on those lessons yet, you can still watch and catch up at any time. So we'd love to have you. Let's see. It's a new experience learning. Hey, David. Let's see. Which did you not know about, Charles? I'm not sure what I was doing when I got that, when you made that comment. So if you could tell me. Canadians are eager to learn and nice. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. Look forward to seeing you inside the course. I liked how you use the luminance range to get to the sky. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, that's a trick that I kind of figured out in terms of not all the time does Lightroom get it right. And the same happens in Photoshop. Like if you do select sky or select subject, you have to kind of sometimes tweak it. It's not always perfect, right? But because in this case, the sky was a similar tonal range, luminance range worked well. I couldn't have used color because of the color differences here, right? Oh, yes, we did 25, didn't we? Let's see. This image would be good in black and white. Possibly, Linton? Yeah, absolutely. Well, check out, and in regards to this comment, Mark, that you've been using Lightroom for a long time, check out some of the comments on the reviews of the product, because a few other people have said the same, that they've been using Lightroom for a long time and they're learning lots. So as long as you pick up some things along the way, and if you're learning lots today, you'll get a lot out of the course. Okay, I think that comes to the end of the questions. So I just want to remind everybody, I'm going to bring up the slide again, to submit some new images because I am running out. This is what we've got left. So just a reminder that I want to get you to submit your images. I'm looking for raw images. You've seen this kind of images that we're doing today. Raw images that are good already. You know, maybe they have a slight technical problem, but give me one that you want to see edited, or maybe one that you've edited and you want to see what I will do with it. Or maybe one that has given you trouble because of a particular challenge, right? Is it a contrast issue? Is there a color balance issue? That kind of thing. So yes, please submit some images. I love this, David. Lightroom Classic was abusing me for 7 years. Now I'm using it. I love it. Yes. All right. There's a link in the chat, and if you're watching this replay, there's a link below the video to submit your images. So I want to sign out from there. Hopefully my hair isn't crazy today. So thanks for coming, everybody. And as always, providing great questions and feedback and fantastic images. Keep them coming. We are doing this every week. Next week is back to Luminar. And by then, I will be able to show the secret stuff. All right. So we'll see you all next week. Take care.